Okay, let's try a thought experiment. Imagine you're walking down the street. It's a normal Tuesday. You run into a guy. Let's say he's wearing a maintenance uniform, maybe some grease on his hands. Looks like he just got off a long shift. Totally unassuming. You wouldn't look twice.
Just a regular face in the crowd.
Exactly. But he stops you. He looks you dead in the eye, and the air just changes. Yeah. He tells you that when he looks at you, he doesn't just see your face. He sees a movie of your entire life playing out.
And not just the highlight reel, the one you put on social media.
Right. He sees the sins you buried 20 years ago. He sees the secrets you haven't told your spouse. And then he drops the bomb. He tells you exactly how you're going to get hurt tomorrow. A broken bone, a crash, a fall.
It sounds like the opening scene of a psychological thriller.
It does. But then he says the kicker, the part that makes you freeze. I don't want your money. In fact, if you try to pay me, you're insulting God. I just want you to listen. So here's the question. Do you walk away or do you stay and listen?
That is the central wager surrounding the man we're covering today. His name is Narciso Olalo. And for thousands of people in the Philippines, this isn't some hypothetical scenario. This is what they call the power of mind.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're unpacking the strange, intense, and strictly defined world of Narciso Olalo. And I have to say, going through these sources, articles, testimonials, his own ministry notes, this is not your typical faith healer story. We aren't talking about televangelists in gold-plated suits asking for seed money to buy a private jet.
No, quite the opposite. This is a story that flips the usual script on religious leadership and spiritual economics. We're looking at a man who claims to be the number one instrument chosen by God, yet he works a blue-collar job to fund his own ministry.
It's a fascinating contradiction. But before we get into the theology and the wild stories, and trust me, there are some wild stories coming up, we need to establish who this guy actually thinks he is. Because he's very specific about titles, right?
He is incredibly specific. Usually in these charismatic movements, you hear titles like prophet, messenger, or apostle. Olalo rejects all of those. He explicitly states that he is not a prophet.
So what does he call himself?
He defines his role as a calling. He views himself strictly as an instrument. The way he explains it, a prophet might have a permanent status, but an instrument is. It's utilized only when there's a specific message to deliver. It's a subtle distinction, but it frames his authority differently. He isn't the source of the power. He's just the wire the electricity flows through.
I like that distinction. It feels less ego-driven, at least on the surface. But to understand his calling, we have to understand who he's comparing himself against. There's a cultural institution in the Philippines called the Albulario. For our listeners who might not be familiar, can you break that down?
Sure. So in the Philippines, especially in rural areas, the Albulario is a cornerstone of daily life. These are traditional folk healers. They use herbs, roots, a mix of Catholic and indigenous spiritual practices. If you get sick, you might go to the doctor or you might go to the Albulario. It's deeply respected.
But Olalo seems to have a bit of a beef with them.
He does. He respects that they exist, but he claims their power is fundamentally flawed. He calls them manghula, which translates to guessers. His argument is that an albulario is looking at signs, maybe reading candle wax or using a pendulum, and making an educated guess. They might be right, they might be wrong.
It's like a weather forecast, 40% chance of rain.
Exactly. Whereas Olalo calls himself an astral healer.
Astral healer. Okay, that sounds a lot more sci-fi.
It does, but the distinction is crucial. According to Olalo, an astral healer sees a future that is conditional. He claims he sees the tragedy coming, the car crash, the disease, but that future isn't set in stone. It can be stopped. It's a warning, not a sentence. But there is one condition. You have to believe.
So let me get this straight. An albulario might tell me, you will have bad luck. Olalo says, you will have bad luck unless you listen to me right now.
Precisely. It shifts the agency entirely onto the believer. If the bad thing happens, it's not because it was meant to be. It's because you didn't believe the warning.
That is a heavy psychological burden to place on someone. Here is your potential tragedy. It's up to you to stop it. But let's pivot to the thing that arguably gives him the most credibility, even among skeptics. The money. Or the lack of it.
This is the unicorn feature of his ministry. I mean, in almost every study of charismatic leadership, there's a financial mechanism. Olalo has a strict, absolute prohibition on collecting money. No tithes, no love offerings, no donation bucket.
Which is just, it's unheard of. I mean, usually you follow the money to find the motive. If he isn't taking money, how does he survive?
He cites a direct instruction from God, please do not sell my words. And he takes this very, very literally. He views the monetization of faith as a cardinal sin. And he uses this to go on the offensive against the established church.
Oh, so he's not just doing his own thing, he's actively attacking the mainstream.
Vigorously. He calls priests and pastors false prophets, specifically because they collect money. His argument is that they're making money out of God's words. He asks a very populist question. Why should you, the struggling believer, sacrifice your money for the church? He thinks the church leader should be sacrificing for you.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
But does he actually walk the walk?
According to all the sources, yes. He works as maintenance staff. He uses his own wages to fund his ministry, which he calls crusada or crusade. He pays for the venue rentals. He pays for transportation.
Wait, he pays for the audience to get there.
He often covers transportation fares for attendees who can't afford it. And this is the detail that really stuck out to me. He feeds them. He and his family buy and prepare food for the people attending his sessions.
That creates such a powerful dynamic. It's not just, I am your spiritual leader, it's, I am your host and I am serving you.
It disarms skepticism immediately. If someone asks, is this guy a fraud? The immediate counterargument is, how can he be a fraud? He's losing money on this. It signals that his motivation must be sincere because there's no profit motive. He calls it clean money out of hard work.
So if the transaction isn't financial, what is the cost? Because there is always a cost. You don't get something for nothing.
You're right. The currency here is faith. Specifically, adherence to what he calls the 3 Ps.
Okay, let's break those down. What are the hoops you have to jump through?
The first two are, fairly standard for Christian theology. First is pagsisi, which means repentance. You have to be sorry for your sins. Second is pagbabogo, which means change, renewing your life, stepping away from bad habits.
Okay, standard redemption arc stuff. Be a better person.
But the third one is the lock. The third P is lubos na pananiwala,
which translates to
total belief. But it's very specific. You must have total belief in Jesus Christ, yes, but you must also have total belief that Narciso Olalo is God's chosen instrument. It's a package deal.
So you can't say, I believe in God, but I'm not so sure about this maintenance guy.
No. If you doubt the instrument, you break the connection. He says, I am the one treating you, but God is the one healing you. But that channel only opens if you accept his authority completely.
And to prove he has that authority, to prove he's worth that total belief, he uses this power of mind. I want to get into the specific stories because they are wild.
Right. This is the hook. He claims the power of mind lets him see a person's life story, their hidden sins, future events, just by looking at them. And the case studies in the notes are, well, they're specific. He's not doing cold reading where he says, I sense you've had some trouble.
With a loved one, or I sense a change coming. Yeah, that's horoscope stuff. Let's look at the fire dancer story. This felt like a scene from a movie.
It's a very vivid example. So Olalo is at a show, fire dancers are performing. He sees a performer about to climb this high bamboo structure. The show hasn't even really started, but Olalo turns to his father and says, watch, he will fall.
He calls the shot before the ball is even thrown.
Exactly. The dancer climbs up, and moments later, just as predicted, he falls. Hits the ground hard, couldn't stand up. Olalo uses this to demonstrate that he sees the event before, the physical laws even take over.
But in that case, he didn't intervene. He just watched it happen to prove he could see it.
Correct. That was a demonstration of sight. The next case study, the motorcycle incident, that reinforces the improbability of his visions.
This was the bus trip to Bolingoin.
Yes. He's on a bus with his family. He looks out the window and sees 2 motorcycles. They're speeding, maybe racing a little bit. He tells his companions, watch, they're going to crash.
Okay, but hold on. A skeptic would say, 2 guys speeding on motorcycles. Predicting a crash isn't exactly magic, that's just probability.
And Olalo anticipates that. He emphasizes in the account that the road was empty. It was a day with very light traffic. There were no other cars to hit. Logically, they should have been fine. But 200 meters later...
So what if I told you that a regular, everyday...
So he's arguing he saw the fate, not just the risk.
Exactly. But the most important story, the one that really explains his whole theology, is the story of his friend, Abarientos. This is the tragedy that proves the rule.
The broken bone story.
Right. Olalo says he received a divine message while sleeping. A vision that his friend Abarientos had a broken bone. But when he woke up, the friend was totally fine.
So it was a premonition.
It was.
Yeah.
And Olalo went to him. He said, I have a message for you. He wanted to warn him. But the friend Well, the friend did what most of
They
us
meet
would do. He was dismissive. He said, Nars, let's not talk about that. He didn't want the bad vibes. He shut it down.
I think we can all relate to that. If someone comes up and says, I dreamt you got hurt, your instinct is to say, don't put that evil on me. You want to block it out.
Of course. But in Olalo's world, that refusal is fatal because the friend refused to listen, refused to ask which bone or how do I stop it. The timeline remained fixed. That same evening, the friend slips in the shower and breaks his collarbone.
And that's the prevention clause we talked about.
Yes. Olalo's whole argument is, I saw it. I tried to tell you. If you had believed me, we could have prayed. We could have changed the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But because you didn't believe, the future played out exactly as the vision showed.
It's a very tight logical loop. If nothing happens, it's because you believed and saved yourself. If the bad thing happens, it's because you didn't believe enough.
It's completely non-falsifiable, which is a hallmark of strong belief systems. But, it gets darker. We've talked about accidents. But the power of mind also claims to see sins, crimes, things people have buried deep.
This is where it shifts from guardian angel to big brother.
It does. He claims he can see the sins of the living and even the dead. The most graphic example in the sources is the beheading story.
I read this 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding it. It's incredibly graphic.
It is. A man attends one of Olalo's crusades. Olalo confronts him. He tells the man, I see you beheaded someone.
Wow. That's a massive accusation. You better be right if you say that to a stranger.
And he doesn't stop there. He provides the receipts, so to speak. He describes the head being wrapped in a specific black cloth with white checkered squares. He describes it being placed in the plastic bag. He even describes the man taking the head to the person who ordered the hit.
It's the detail about the cloth that gets me. Black cloth with white checkered squares. You can't guess that. That's not a generic cold read.
That's the smoking gun technique. If I tell you you killed someone, you can deny it. If I tell you killed someone and wrapped the head in this specific checkered cloth, and you did, your world just collapses. You know that I know.
And according to the source, what happened?
The man admitted it. He confirmed the details. For the audience watching, that is the moment of conversion. Because how could Olalo possibly know that unless he really is seeing the unseen?
It validates everything else he says. If he's right about the checkered cloth, he must be right about God. He must be right about the healing.
It establishes dominance. There was another instance with a woman, a neighbor's wife. Olalo looked at her and had a vision that she used to be a nun.
Which is a bit of a curveball if she's currently in a relationship.
Right. But he saw further back. He claimed that 25 years ago, while she was a nun, she had an affair with a priest.
Oh, wow. Imagine being that woman. You have a secret from 2.5 decades ago. You think it's buried forever. And this maintenance worker looks at you and just pulls it out of the air.
The source says she just cried and confirmed it. She asked, how could you possibly know? This reinforces that idea of total belief. If the instrument knows your darkest secrets, you cannot hide. It forces a complete surrender.
It creates a relationship where he holds all the cards. But what happens if you challenge him? We talked about the guy who ignored the warning. What about people who actively mock him?
This is where the narrative shifts to what I'd call Old Testament justice. Olalo's message comes with a very stern warning. Don't gamble your life.
It's not God loves you. It's okay to have questions.
No, it's respect the instrument or face the consequences. The sources list specific critics by name who mocked him. And Olalo details the divine consequences they faced.
So who's on this list?
There's a man named Manning. Olalo says Manning criticized him publicly. Subsequently, Manning was struck by lightning. He survived, but later died of cancer. Then there's June Klima, whose house was hit by lightning.
Lightning seems to be a recurring theme here. It's very dramatic.
It is. It's a very primal symbol of judgment. Then there's a pastor who challenged his theology and allegedly died of a stroke shortly after. And maybe the most personal one, a cousin of Olalo's.
His own family.
Yes. This cousin called him a false prophet. Later, the cousin was in a motorcycle accident. The text says he was left nubbly, which means he went mad or became mentally impaired.
That is terrifying. It turns skepticism into a physical health risk.
It constructs a logical fortress around the ministry. The logic is, I am God's instrument. If you mock the instrument, you are mocking God. Therefore, God will punish you. It effectively silences dissent. If you see your neighbor get struck by lightning after making a joke about Olalo, you're going to keep your mouth shut.
It's a very effective defense mechanism. Go ahead and write that bad review, but watch out for thunderstorms.
Exactly. It raises the stakes. This isn't just a Sunday service, it's a matter of life and death.
So we have this picture of Narciso Olalo. He travels the country, Cebu, Bohol, Cagayan de Oro, Cavite, Bataan. He's been doing this from 2013 to 2024.
And we should stress the scale. He's not booking stadiums. He's going to covered courts in barangays, local neighborhoods. It's a grassroots movement.
And he's feeding them, paying their fare, telling them their future.
And asking for nothing but belief. That no money rule is his shield. When critics say he's a cult leader, he points to his bank account, or lack thereof, and says, how can I be a fraud? I'm the one paying.
It complicates the narrative for anyone trying to debunk him. Usually you find the secret bank account. Here, the money flows the wrong way.
It forces you to reckon with the message itself. If he's not doing it for money, why is he doing it? Is it power? Is it a genuine conviction? Or, and this is the possibility his followers hold on to, is it actually real?
That's the question that keeps you up at night. Because if he's right about the checkered cloth and he's right about the broken bone, what if he's right about the rest of it?
That is the wager. He offers healing and safety in a chaotic world. The price tag is $0, but the cost is absolute surrender of your skepticism. You have to let go of your logic and trust the power of mind.
It really makes you think about faith healing in general. We often dismiss it as trickery, hand-waving, stage magic. But Olalo is offering something tangible, specific, granular details.
It raises the question, is it cold reading, coincidence, or something else? When someone tells you something about your past that nobody else knows, the how almost doesn't matter in that moment. The psychological impact is absolute.
And that impact is what keeps the Cruzada moving from town to town, fueled by a maintenance worker's ranges and a message of total belief.
It's a powerful, self-sustaining system. And as long as people feel uncertain about their future, they will line up to see the man who claims he can watch the movie of their life.
So here is where we leave you today. Go back to that street corner. The man in the maintenance uniform is still looking at you. He knows what you did. He knows what's coming. He doesn't want your cash. He just wants you to believe. Do you listen, or do you keep walking and take your chances with the lightning?
That is the gamble Narciso Olalo asks you to make.
Thanks for diving deep with us into the strange, fascinating world of the astral healer. We'll see you on the next one.